Well, welcome everyone. That was One Lifer John DeVries, obviously amazing guitar player. Just to warm up your morning to get us started with what we're doing today. My name is Brett Nicholson. I'm the pastor here, and I want to welcome everybody that's joining us from our other campuses. We're at the East Campus, but we also have one in Henderson and one on the west side of Evansville. And then many of you are joining online. And also, we have a special guest today with Trinity Radio viewers through YouTube, also joining us as well. So welcome to all of you who are coming to something that's going to be a little bit different. And there's going to be a video that plays right after I'm finished that explains this more in depth. We're doing today what we call One Life Explorer Edition. In other words, we take a service a month and we design it for those who are exploring or open to exploring the Christian faith. And we want to create an environment where you can ask questions, you can wonder about things, and we deal with subject matter that especially gets to hopefully intellectual credibility of the faith, because I know a number of people may think, you know, the Christian faith it seems like it can be a little fairy tale-ish, something like that. And we want to answer those questions and give you some things that would enhance your understanding of the intellectual credibility of the faith. And that's especially true today. We say it this way: we believe that you can bring your brain to church. And I really hope you brought your brain today because first of all, we're going to be talking about your brain, but also we're going to be introducing subject matter probably a lot of us have not heard before in this way. Anyway, we're going to be studying the subject of consciousness. Now, first of all, consciousness and its relationship to our brain. And there's a lot of discussion going on about this. One of the things that's being wondered about right now, Elon Musk, for instance, has warned that maybe we're building artificial intelligence that may have consciousness someday and take over the world, things like that. Can that happen? But it also could be viewed as evidence for God, evidence for the existence of the soul, and evidence for the afterlife. And we're going to be talking about all those things today. So we'll be inspiring some questions in your mind. Now, the way we're going to go about this, sometimes we're going to do this fairly simply. Today, we're going to add some production elements because we're talking about consciousness. So you actually have 3D glasses if you're at one of our live services. And so there will be a time in the service where you will be cued on the screen to put on your 3D glasses because we want to experiment around with your consciousness today as just a way of looking at things, all right? And during this time, you can, we're going to be doing production. There's a couple things. One, we have a local band, local to the Evansville area, called Ride the Giant, which is a band that's going to perform a couple of original songs, also a cover tune, just to kind of help us out today. A great band. And then the presenter is going to be Dr. Braxton Hunter. He has 2 doctorates and has been thinking about this kind of thing a lot, and is also the lead of Trinity Radio and president of Trinity Seminary in Evansville. And so he's going to be presenting to us here in just a moment. Now, you can ask questions, and there's a few different ways. You can text to a number that we'll give you, and so anytime you want to ask a question, text it in, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can put it in the comments section, or you can go to our website, onelifechurch.org, and look for the Explorer Edition page, and there's a place where you can put questions there. And what we're going to do is we're going to gather up the questions and answer them on our podcast, and then continue the discussion on Trinity Radio's podcast as well, because this will kick off several conversations in people's minds, I'm sure. And finally, I want to recommend a couple resources so you can continue the conversation. The first one is, and we have them at our live campuses, this is called Am I Just My Brain by Sharon Dirkst. Am I Just My Brain? And then there's another one called The Soul by J.P. Moreland. The subtitle is How We Know It's Real and Why It Matters. And so please just be taking those things in as we kind of learn that the Christian faith has a lot of depth to it and a lot of intellectual credibility that sometimes we're not as aware of as we should be. Hope you have a wonderful morning this morning, and it will spark your thinking and your conversations. And have a great day. And we're going to play a video now that explains a little bit more in depth what we're doing. See.
Welcome to One Life Explorer Edition. How would you like to explore church as an insider rather than an outsider? Wouldn't it be nice to explore church and all that goes with it? Faith, worship, love, prayer, the Bible, the afterlife, but in an environment that was open to questions and discussion rather than suspicious of them. That's what we're inviting you to do. wonder. So here's the plan. Each Sunday, we do things churches all around the world have done for 2 millennia. We sing together, we pray together, we serve together, and we listen to teaching together. Outside of the services, many even hang out together. We believe these things are important. And what drives us to our belief is that Jesus of Nazareth really is who he claimed to be. And his claims, well, they're extraordinary. In his words, he saw himself as, among other things, the way and the truth and the life. And as bold and unlikely as that claim may seem, we believe there are lots of good reasons for 21st century thinking people to believe it. We'd like to share those reasons with anyone who's open to exploring them. That's why we have dedicated at least one Sunday each month specifically to not do the things we ordinarily do, so we can take the time to share the reasons we have found so compelling with those who may be skeptical or maybe even struggled with belief. That's what One Life Explorer Edition is all about. It's for you, the explorers, those who are open but have honest, thoughtful struggles with the extraordinary claims of Jesus, or who might have suspicions about religion in general or just church specifically. Each time we'll take a different topic that we hope is of interest to anyone, from big questions like where did the universe come from, to why has the church done so many awful things in the past? We want to create an environment of honesty, transparency, but also intelligent discussion. Sometimes our approach will be simple, and other times we'll use our love for elaborate production and art to bring the message with a little more velocity and creativity. In simplest terms, Jesus made a lot of extraordinary claims about himself. The most important thing we want to do is present reasons why we think Jesus should be believed. Then we want to invite people to dialogue and explore the most important questions of life. Welcome to One Life Explorer Edition. Welcome to the journey.
Held a child's hand and prayed, my God, make me a better man. Have you ever gazed upon the stars and wondered what our places are? Have you ever heard a song for the first time and thought of days that have long since passed by? Have you ever hoped a moment would last, only to blink and have it pass? I have often asked what it means to live, to make, to love, create. Stop and ponder and awestruck wonder. I wonder what dreams may come when they're dreaming down to sleep. What tales they'll tell when the dream becomes reality. So please stay, echo for eternity. What a thing to be a human being. Do they rise up from the ether? Our choices we make, choices at all, or we just slightly more evolved? If none of it matters, why do we mourn the ones we lost, the ones unborn? If everything's right, nothing is wrong, how can we be sure at all? I have often asked what it means to live, to make, to love, create. Stop and ponder and awestruck wonder. I wonder what dreams may come are a soul. You have a body, you are a soul. You're not a body, you are a soul. You have a body, you are a soul. You're not a body, you are a soul. You have a body, you are a soul. You have a body, you are a soul. You're not a body, you are a soul. You have a body, you are a soul. You're not a body, you are a soul. You're not a body, you are a soul. You have a body, you are a soul. You're not a body, you are a soul. You have a body, you are a soul.
I am so excited to be talking with you all today about a subject that is just mind-blowing, and that subject is your consciousness. Now, our pastor said a few things about that a moment ago, but the reason you saw all that you just saw and felt and heard is because everything that you have been experiencing this morning in this sanctuary is because of your consciousness. Every thought you had, every song that you heard, every color you saw, what you're thinking about the people sitting around you or behind you, what you're going to do after you get done today, stop thinking about that. All of those things are possible because of this incredible ability to experience the world from a first-person perspective that we call your consciousness. That's what we're going to talk about today, and whether it provides evidence, good reason to believe that there is a God, that you are a soul, as the song just said, and all kinds of other things about the afterlife. And so as we talk about that, I want to set it up by picking up on something that Brett said a few moments ago, and that is really one of the big conversations we're having right now in the world is whether artificial intelligences and robots can ever become conscious. I want us to start there and think about this for just a moment as you begin to maybe toy around with the notion that maybe your consciousness and your brain aren't exactly the same thing, even if they're related. So on the screen right now, what you are going to see is you're going to see a number of consumer products that may be in your home or even in your pocket, depending on what they are. We have one of the early smartphones. Did anybody out there ever have one of these flip phones? Not a smartphone, but a flip phone. Anybody have that? Okay, you do. We have an early Apple phone, and now Apple smartphones and all the other smartphones have these voice assistants. Apple has Siri, and Siri can communicate with you. And what I want you to notice is these are brains of a sort. They're man-made brains. They're robot brains. But Siri is not really conscious. It's the best that they've been able to do with a consumer product with helping it to fake consciousness. But Siri is just spitting out pre-programmed responses to you. And actually, half the time, it's really frustrating because we have the Roomba robot too, and the Roomba robot will do good most of the time and then get stuck under the couch and you don't know what happened. And the problem is these things are frustrating to us. Now, they're amazing if you feel about it like we do in our family. We're blown away that these artificial intelligences and robots exist on the one hand, but then on the other hand, they're really frustrating because if you asked it this morning, hey, how do I get to One Life East? Maybe it told you, or maybe it said, I don't know, but here's a website, you can read about it on your own. Thanks. Well, why is that? It's because these things aren't conscious like a human being is conscious. Siri, Alexa, Google Home, they don't have this first-person experience. You're not really interacting with a real person who's conscious. You're just interacting with pre-programmed responses. So we have those brains of a sort, the best we can do at coming up with a fake consciousness. Then on the other hand, there are some robots that you probably have some affinities for. In a place like One Life and the people that might show up to church at a church like One Life, I would wager that some of you have some great feelings of love, admiration, or something toward one of these characters, maybe not. We have Commander Data there, and Commander Data is on Star Trek, and one of his story arcs is he really wants to be a real boy, basically. He wants to have that conscious experience of the world, or he acts like he does, and he wants to have a human experience of the world. Then we have the robot from Lost in Space, and some of you may remember the robot from Lost in Space who's always worried about Will Robinson, right? And then we have C-3PO. Everybody knows C-3PO. And when we look at these characters, you probably feel as though you have more of a human connection with these particular robots. And the problem is, yeah, you do, but they're not real. You're not really connecting with robots. Those other things, those consumer products, those are real robots, and you're not connecting on a human level with them. But these robots that are fictional, we really believe them. When we watch them on screen, we think, Commander Data really is sad that he's not a real human being. We look at the robot from Lost in Space, and he's Will Robinson, and we really think he's consciously worried about Will Robinson. And C-3PO, when he says, we're doomed, we really think he's terrified. But the thing about it is, you're not really connecting with a robot when you're connecting with those fictional characters, are you? You're not connecting with C-3PO. You're connecting with this man, Anthony Daniels, the man who's inside of the suit, a real thinking, conscious person. So all this talk about artificial intelligences and robots, we're going to come back to that later on. But what I want you to realize right now is we've done the best we can so far and still not conscious. Most of them will tell you they're still not conscious if you ask them. On the other hand, what we know we connect with in a conscious way, in a human way, are fictional robots that are actually humans and other human beings. This seems like something that is really powerful and different than just a brain, because those robots have a brain of a sort. Another way to help you understand exactly the difference between your conscious first-person experience of the world, the way that you're awake to the world, like robots are not, is this thought experiment that comes to us from a man named Frank Jackson. Now, I want you to hang with me. This is the part where if you've got a thinking cap, put it on and straighten it up a little bit. This will cause you to have to think a little deeply about this. But imagine that we have a story of a woman who is 35 years old, and her whole life she's been in a black and white room. She's never seen color. Now, I know that this is hard for you to imagine, but just imagine that it's possible that we have a person who's 35 years old, and this woman has never seen color. Her favorite color, though she's never seen color, is red. She studied all of the symbolic imagery about the color red. She knows all about the wavelengths and the light and all that stuff that makes red possible, but she's never seen the color red. In fact, we could say she actually begins a program in college to try and get a degree in color spectrum theory. And she gets a PhD in color spectrum theory. Her emphasis is the color red, and she knows more facts about the color red than any other person on the planet. But remember, she's never seen it. Now, here's the question. Her brain has all the facts, but if she escapes the room, and the first thing she sees is red, the question is, does she learn anything? She knows all the facts, that's in her brain. Does she learn anything when she experiences red for the first time? I want to say that I think she does. What she learns is what it's like to see red. She knew all the facts, but now she's got what it's like, this first-person experience of the color red. That's what it means to be conscious, to have that kind of an experience. It's an amazing thing. And because of that experience of red being different from just the facts, it's like your brain serves up all the facts and all the data, and then you and your conscious experience make decisions based on those facts, and you decide what you're going to do, and you can imagine. In fact, some of the greatest things about being human are possible because of our consciousness. The things that matter the most. Think about free will, for example. You have free will to make real choices that are meaningful because you have a conscious experience. Because free will is the conscious activity of looking at things and making a conscious decision of one thing over another thing. We have that. We have love because love is a conscious decision to give of yourself for the good of someone else that you love. And we also have imagination, the conscious activity of thinking about the way things are right now and how they could be later on. A song that hasn't been written yet, but you could write it, a work of art, someone who you are in love with, you can imagine what it would be like to be them so that you can love them better. The most important things about being a human being are things that we have because we are conscious. It's really important. And it doesn't seem like we had to be, because these robots aren't. In fact, I think we can detail this a little more by thinking about what it would be like if we weren't conscious. If we had brains but weren't conscious. Now, we've looked at some things like that. We saw the robots. They have a computer brain, but yet no consciousness. And they don't have what matters most about being human. But we actually, in pop culture, like TV, movies, and stuff like that, have come up with an idea for a thought experiment of what it would be like if you had a human being with a body and a brain, but no consciousness. I wonder if any of you all, and it's a little awkward bringing this up in church, but I wonder how many of you have ever seen the television program Walking Dead. Anybody raise your hand out there? Okay, a few of you out there, and some of you are afraid to mention that in church or admit that. But Walking Dead is all about zombies. And what are zombies? Well, they're not real, Braxton. Yes, I know, calm down, they're not real. But even though they're not real, they give us a way of imagining what it would be like if you had a brain and a body but no consciousness. And basically, you'd be wandering around following your instincts everywhere, basically. You clip out consciousness, and you clip out the most meaningful things about being a human. Free will, love, imagination. And it doesn't seem like this is something that we've reproduced in artificial intelligences. You clip out consciousness, and you clip out what matters the most. What I want you to do over the next few moments is I want you to think about all the things that are going on in the room. I want you to do an experiment with me. I want you to count all of the things that you are consciously perceiving over the next few moments. And if you've got a pair of 3D glasses, it might be a good time to put them on.
You know
it's just for today. Maybe tomorrow, good Lord, take you away. Now listen, dream on, dream on, dream on, dream till your dream come true. Dream on, dream on, dream on, dream till your dream come true. Dream on, dream on, dream on, dream on. Sing with me, sing for the year, sing for love, sing for the tear. Sing with me, it's just for today, maybe tomorrow, good Lord, take you away. Sing with me, sing for the year, sing for love, sing for the tear. Sing with me, just for today, maybe tomorrow, good Lord, take you away.
Wow, it's like sensory overload, man, but that is fantastic. Did you count how many things you were consciously aware of during the midst of that? Probably not. You probably lost track. But it's amazing because all of that is possible because of your consciousness. We know consciousness is amazing. And then the question becomes, okay, well, what is it exactly? How is it possible? So what we're going to do is we're going to look at 4 problems that I think there are when we discuss consciousness. And when we look at these 4 problems, I think in answering them, we can find out where the evidence leads and whether it leads to naturalistic atheism or something else, or maybe something to do with God and Christianity. So we're going to use these questions. How does matter wake up? Are you just your body? Are the brain and consciousness related? And does consciousness exist without the brain? So that's what we're going to talk about here. And number 1, how does matter wake up? Well, you might think, well, what does that mean? I'm matter and I woke up this morning. Well, you did wake up, and there are parts of your body. I mean, your body is made of matter. But what we mean is, how is it even possible for a brain to become conscious if your consciousness is just your brain? How is it that dirt wakes up? How is it that the lights are on in somebody's home? You know, how is it that you can put enough Legos together, so to speak, physical stuff, and then suddenly you have a person who's awake? It's a little bit of a problem. And by the way, just in case you think, well, yeah, you're going to say it's a problem for naturalism, just matter is all there is to explain how we're conscious. Of course you're going to say that. You're a preacher, you're a theologian. Okay, I understand that concern, and that's a valid concern. So what I want to do is I want to introduce you to Philip Goff, who is a philosopher of mind. Here's what he has to say about that.
Despite great progress in our scientific understanding of the brain, we still don't really have even the beginnings of an explanation of how complicated electrochemical signaling is somehow able to give rise to an inner subjective world of colors and sounds and smells and tastes that each of us knows every second of waking life.
So this is a man, an expert, who's doing work on this very issue, and he says, we don't even have the beginnings of an explanation of how these complicated electrochemical signals give rise to this conscious experience that we have. And in fact, maybe some of you were thinking a moment ago, hold on, you threw up those images of all the consumer products and Alexa and Google Home and all those things, and you said they're not conscious, and sure, they're not conscious. But maybe if we keep working on it and people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and everybody else puts their fingers on it, maybe we'll get a complex enough brain that it will become conscious even though it's not a human being. Well, I mean, that's something that is certainly a big topic today. But Roger Penrose, who is a famous philosopher and mathematician and has been involved in some of the great scientific breakthroughs, and he says, I don't think this is one of the great mysteries. I don't think consciousness is in this glass of water, as he said, looking at a glass of water. He said, but it seems to be something we have, and I don't think it's just a matter of making things more complicated, and then somehow you'll be conscious. It seems to be something subtler than that. So that comes from an expert who says, it doesn't seem like complicated artificial intelligence is the answer. So there are two options that we're going to look at here real quickly. One option is maybe the way that dirt wakes up and you're awake to the world in a way that grass and robots are not, maybe that's because everything is conscious. You're conscious, but everything is conscious. Believe it or not, this is a popular view that's getting more popular all the time in the philosophy of mind and in the science about this, and it's called panpsychism. Now, don't worry about that. There won't be a test, and you'll probably never need to know that, but you can Google it if you want to. Panpsychism is the view that everything on some level is conscious. Electrons are conscious. Cheesecake is conscious. Bricks are conscious. You're conscious. Everything. This stage is conscious. Now, they don't think that it's conscious to the degree that you are, whatever that means, but to some degree of consciousness. The problem with that is there's really not any evidence. It's just kind of a way to kind of try to answer the question of how you became conscious. Well, because everything's conscious. Okay, so there's that, if you want to think about that for a moment. And then there's a naturalistic answer, like an atheist might say, an atheistic naturalistic answer that says, well, maybe the solution is nothing is conscious, including you, at least not the way that you think. Alex Rosenberg, author of The Atheist's Guide to Reality, says the following: the illusion that there is something inside that has thoughts about stuff is certainly as old as the illusion that there are thoughts about stuff. They almost certainly evolve together as a package deal. But if the physical facts fix all the facts, then there can't be a me or you inside our bodies with a special point of view. When it fixed the facts, physics ruled out the existence of selves, souls, persons, or non-physical minds inhabiting our bodies. He later says about this, our brain navigates us through life very nicely, thank you, without ever thinking about anything. Now think about what's just been said. This is one naturalistic answer. There are others, but this is one naturalistic answer, is that, well, yeah, it is hard to explain how matter becomes conscious, but listen, the solution may be that everything's conscious, and it may be that nothing's conscious, including you, at least not the way that you think you're conscious. It's more of just an illusion, an afterthought. Your brain's really doing everything. Now, I'll just tell you as a pro tip, if any philosopher, atheist, Christian, or anybody else ever suggests to you that maybe you should adopt the position that you don't exist, then I would encourage you to reject that view, all right? So we've got those possible answers. One doesn't have any evidence, and one seems like it doesn't make sense of our experience. But that's problem number one. We've got to come to an answer about that problem. But problem number two is, are you just your body? You know, we had a song where he says, you have a body, you are a soul. You're not a body, you have a soul. Well, God wanted us to be spiritual, soulish beings in a physical body if you believe in God. But here's the question we've got to ask about this idea of, are you your body? You know, if you're just your body and your brain is just what you are, and we do kind of think that way almost default, don't we? I mean, if you touch me, I say, you touched me. You touched my physical body. Maybe on my brain. Maybe that's what's going on. But do you know that your body actually isn't the same body you used to have? This may be shocking to you, but ever so often, your cells cycle out over 7 to 10 years and are replaced by new cells. Some of them happen more quickly than others. Blood cells are different than skin cells, but even right now, you're fluffing off just look at yourselves. You're fluffing off all these dead skin cells right here in our midst. And you're replacing those with new skin cells, which means after a couple of decades, you don't have the same physical body that you used to have. And so we've got a real problem with what does it mean to talk about you. Now, this is an example that some of you may have heard before of this sort of idea, but whether or not George Washington ever chopped down a proverbial cherry tree, you familiar with that story? If someone put an axe in my hand and said, this is the axe, and there's only two parts, the head and the handle, this is the axe that George Washington used to chop down the cherry tree. Braxton, you're holding the axe. Now, the head of it's been changed 17 times, and the handle of it's been changed 30 times, but you're holding the axe. Well, am I? I mean, I don't really feel like I am because there's only two parts to this and they've all been changed, right? It's not the same axe. In the same way, if you're just your body and your body it gets changed and cells are replaced over time, at some point, you're not you anymore if you were your body. And I don't mean it like, oh, I'm not the same person I used to be. No, we're talking about you're literally not the same identity that you used to be. And that is a serious, serious problem. Whatever the solution is, it's got to handle problem number 2. Number 3, the next problem is, are the brain and consciousness related? See, the issue here is, it does seem to be the case, doesn't it? That we can change our conscious experience by interacting with our brains. Some of you may be on anxiety medication or depression medication. This is something that changes your brain chemistry, and then because of that, your conscious experience change. I mean, that's the whole point, right? And then, of course, there are great stories, like amazing stories anyway, like there's a man who had a railroad spike shot through his head, and he survived. And he actually went on living, but he had a different conscious experience. So it does seem like there's some connection between our consciousness and our brain, but yet they're not the exact same thing. And so we've got to come to a solution about that. And then 4, we've got to have a solution about whether consciousness exists without the brain, without the physical body, without the brain. Now, this one is a bit mind-blowing, and you're about to, some of you might roll your eyes a little bit, but just stay with me. It's too early for you to thinking I'm a kook yet. But I want you to understand that we have these experiences that happen that are written up in the medical journals. People talk about them all the time. 30 million cases in America, England, and Europe that are near-death experiences. Now, there's a lot of eye-rolling when you talk about near-death experiences, because even among Christians, it sounds a little wacky, it sounds a little psychic-y, and you don't like that sort of thing. But for Christians in the audience, Christians should be totally okay with the notion that we survive physical death, right? That's kind of one of the things we talk about. But these stories are amazing, and often they're evidential and seem to indicate that consciousness continues even without the brain functioning. When people have no measurable brainwave activity and no heart rate, and yet they are resuscitated later, and they talk about amazing experiences and facts that can be checked, or they talk about another very interestingly and mysteriously heavenly world that they experienced. Now, one of these stories comes from Kimberly Clark, who talks about a patient named Maria, and when Maria had no brainwave activity, measurable brainwave activity, and heart rate, she had an experience like this. When she was resuscitated later, she talked about how she had left her body during the interaction, during the surgery or whatever, and she actually could talk about what was on the floor in the room and what the doctors were doing and things getting moved around while they were trying to save her life. She actually said she went outside of the hospital, and that on the roof of the hospital, there's a blue tennis shoe with a worn-out spot right where the pinky toe should be. They went and checked it out. Guess what? She was right. There was a blue tennis shoe up there, same style, she said, with a worn-out spot exactly where she said it would be. These stories are amazing because they are evidence that suggests that your consciousness actually continues when your brain isn't functioning. This is amazing. One of my favorite stories is a story of Gary Habermas tells. He's a philosopher at Liberty University, and he tells this story about how he was giving a talk like this before a group of nothing but medical professionals. And as he was talking about the heavenly experiences that people have when they encounter these near-death experiences, he said a woman who was the wife of an ear, nose, and throat doctor over on this side of the crowd stood up. She said, "You're talking about heaven, and I can tell you all about it. I've experienced that." And after a few moments of them staring at her like an animal cracker, like you all are staring at me right now, an oncologist who was an atheist stood up on the other side of the crowd and said, "Well, don't just stand there, tell us about it." And she said, "Okay, I was giving birth to our 3rd child, and I bled out on the table, and I was declared dead." Now, we're not saying she was really dead. Modern medicine can come pretty close to crossing that line and bring someone back. But while she had no brainwave activity, no heart rate, she said, "I was in an amazing place, a heavenly place." And she said, "I can tell you about it. I'll tell you about the color." And then she stopped herself and said, "No, because when I say color, you're thinking of red and green and blue. These are colors that the human eye can't perceive." She stopped and said, "I can tell you about the music." And then she said, "No, because when I say music, you're thinking about Mozart and Beethoven. This is music like you've never heard." She said, "I guess I can't tell you about it." He said, "Let me ask you this. Are you convinced you were there?" She said, "I'm more convinced I was there than I am that I'm here right now." And he said, "My understanding is that the strongest bond 2 human beings have is the bond between a mother and her child. Do you agree with that?" And she said, "Yes." He said, let me ask you this. You had two sons who you knew and loved, and one who was you'd carried for 9 months but had not yet held in your arms. If you had your way, would you have stayed there, or would you have come back to be with your family? She looked at the ground and she began to weep. And she said, he could have raised our family. I would have never left that incredible place. You say, Braxton, do you think that woman went to heaven? Man, I don't know. But I'll tell you what, there are millions of stories of near-death experiences that seem to suggest we survive after our brains aren't functioning. And as you think about that for a moment, I want you to listen to this song, beautiful song about life, death, and hope. It's powerful, powerful song. Powerful song. We have to face the reality of death and what it means for our lives and how we live our lives and whether there's hope. As we come to the end section here, I want us to draw together some of the threads of what we've been discussing, and I want us to think about what it means. So let's look at some of the options that we've mentioned earlier for what consciousness is and how it's possible, and let's look at how those options answer these 4 questions, because they need to answer these 4 questions. So first, how does matter wake up? Are you just your body? Are the brain and consciousness related? Does consciousness exist without the brain? So let's talk about those for just a moment. We have one option, which is the option that's panpsychism, which is a weird, I know, thing, but the idea that everything is conscious. Every slice of pizza, every earlobe, every chair in this room, everything is conscious, right? Okay, how does that stack up to answering these questions? Well, how does matter wake up? It would explain that pretty well, because it says it didn't wake up, it's just that it's always been there. It's baked into the system. Consciousness is a part of everything. Are you just your physical body? Well, this answer could also say about that, well, yeah, maybe you're just your physical body because, the consciousness is built into that stuff. But the problem is, it still wouldn't explain how you continue as the same person over time. Because those bits, even if you want to say they're conscious, get traded out and you have a new body, and on that view, you'd have a new consciousness. Well, what about the fact that the brain and consciousness are related? That if we affect the brain with medication or an injury, then it does affect consciousness. Well, this view would answer that all right. But it wouldn't answer near-death experiences and how it is that the evidence suggests we go on consciously living after our brain no longer functions. So it doesn't answer that well. All right, so let's put that one aside for a minute. What about atheistic naturalism? Naturalism that says matter is all there is, it doesn't answer how does matter wake up. There's no answer to that, because if you just say no one's conscious, nothing is conscious, well, then matter didn't wake up. And even if you don't say that, if you're an atheist, but you want to say we are conscious somehow, there's no explanation for how it is that dirt put into the right order in a brain makes you awake to the world. So there's a big problem there. It would explain why when you damage or affect the brain, it does affect consciousness because you're just your body. But again, it also wouldn't explain how it is that we seem to go on having some kind of a conscious experience when the brain isn't functioning at a measurable level. So what do we have here? What we have is neither one of these options works. But as you might have guessed, there's a third option, at least. There's a lot to be said that we can't cover here, but there's at least a third option, and the third option is this. Maybe consciousness is best explained as coming from consciousness. Maybe a conscious creator made the world with the intention that there would be conscious beings in it who would then be able to interact in this amazing world of sound and color and experience. Maybe this conscious mind would like for conscious minds to be able to commune with him in a conscious way. Maybe God is the best explanation for consciousness. How does that explain these questions? Well, it would explain how it is that, or why it would resolve the problem of why it is that matter can wake up, because matter doesn't wake up. Matter makes up your physical body and the hardware of your brain, but it doesn't explain your conscious experience. On this view, your consciousness is your soul, and your soul, it lays on top of you, and that is the part of you that goes on, and that is how you're conscious. Well, what about the idea of, are you just your body? How is it that you remain the same person right now at age 40 that you were when you busted your knee when you fell off your bike at age 10? Well, the body might be changing, and your body might become a different body in a certain sense as cells cycle out, but the soul would continue unchanged. Not say that you don't learn things, not say you don't have experiences, but the nature of your soul stays the same, and so your identity is still intact. What about the idea of these near-death experiences, that you can live consciously after your brain isn't measurably functioning? Well, obviously this has a great answer to that, and it also even explains why many people have a very interesting afterlife sort of experience that they talk about later. This answers that perfectly well. Your body dies, but your soul continues. Your consciousness continues. Now, there is one problem that I skipped that you might think causes a problem for our view of consciousness that God's the best explanation, and that is, does consciousness, are the brain and consciousness related? How is it, if our soul is our consciousness, that when we affect the brain, we affect consciousness with medications or injuries? Well, we don't think that the brain is unimportant. Believers think that God has designed the human body in an incredible way and that it has function and purpose. The brain, as I said before, is like a computer that serves up the facts, and then in your conscious experience, you make decisions based on those. And here's what I want you to get from this. When we think about what that's like in your brain, it's kind of like your brain is the hardware. It's like an AM/FM radio, if you remember AM/FM radios. They still exist. That's like your brain. It's the hardware, and a signal or a song plays through that FM radio. But if you damage the radio, the song isn't going to sound right, is it? It's going to come through distorted or in some other way different. But you didn't affect the song. You didn't damage the music. You just damaged the hardware. Now, in this similar way, if you damage your brain or if you affect your brain with medication, your consciousness may be a little different, but you didn't destroy the beautiful music of your soul that comes through the hardware of your brain. Those are distinct, although they are related. So I submit to you the best explanation for your conscious experience is that there is a conscious creator who created you with this ability to have free will and make real meaningful decisions, moral decisions, important decisions. You have imagination so that you can think about a beautiful song and write it, or a sculpture and make it, or what you're going to eat and then fix it. You can love because love is real and important, and you can choose to freely give of yourself for the good of another. These things are all possible because of this incredible ability that God gave you to experience the amazing world He made, your consciousness, your soul. And the most important thing, and here's where I will just maybe say some things that sound a little preacher-like. If that's true, then the most important thing you could do with your conscious experience is choose to give it all to Jesus, to serve Him. Now, I haven't said anything about Jesus. You might say, well, you've given me good reasons to believe maybe that there's a soul and maybe God and maybe an afterlife, but how do I know that it's the Christian one? Well, real quickly, I'll just say this. I don't have time for another presentation, and this church has done a presentation on this before, but if you don't believe in the resurrection, I'll tell you what, I understand it sounds wild to people, but I want you to realize this. When we're talking about the facts around the life and death of Jesus, there are a few facts that historians, whether they're Christian, atheist, or whatever in between, at accredited schools and universities all over the Western world universally agree about, historically. That is that, number one, there was a Jesus, that He thought of Himself as God's agent to bring about the kingdom on earth, that it was going to turn the world upside down, this message. They believe that He died by Roman crucifixion under the prefect Pontius Pilate, just like the Bible says. They believe that that after His death, His earliest followers had experiences that they at least interpreted as appearances of the risen Jesus, and that they were so committed to this new faith, this claim about the resurrection, that they were willing to be persecuted and die for it, and some of them did die. So here's what I want to say to you. If God exists and God raised Jesus from the dead, if that's true, if that's a historical fact, then it means that it's very, very important. And it means that there's hope. There's hope for you. You know, the Bible tells us in Romans chapter 10 and verse 9 that if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised Jesus from the dead, you will be saved. John 3:16 tells us, for God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish but have everlasting life. The most important thing consciously you can do today is give it all to Jesus, or at least decide to think about these things in greater detail, because there's hope. You know, for some of you, I don't want you to raise your hand, but you've lost someone's died who you love, and they were a Christian. And some days you'll walk around the house and you'll see a picture of them, and it won't be that big of a deal, but then other days you'll see that picture and you just cry all day long. Or some place in the community that you used to be a special place for the two of you. And now on Thanksgiving, maybe someone else is sitting in the chair they always sat in, but as far as you're concerned, that's their chair. You know what that's like? There's hope. There's hope. The evidence suggests there's hope that you can see them again. You can see them again. And I hope that you will make this decision today to give it all to Jesus. Because if your consciousness survives from one cell to the next as your body changes, and if you can remain conscious even after the brain stops functioning, then you can remain conscious even after the death of your body. I would ask all of you all to do something with me right now. Just think about this for a moment while I'm going to pray. We believe as Christians that our consciousness, part of what's amazing about it, is we have this consciousness and God is conscious, and we can consciously interact with our God in prayer. We're going to do that right now, and perhaps it's your moment to pray to the God that you might not even believe in and ask Him to reveal Himself to you. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for all that you give us. When you gave us stars to enjoy, you could have given us one star and we'd say, look, just look at the star. But when you gave us stars, you gave us billions of stars. Father, I just pray that as you've given us this ability to experience that world, that you would just nudge anyone here closer to this reality, that anyone here who doesn't know you could come to know you for the first time today. We ask all this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Well, thank you so much, Braxton. And as we talk about prayer, us as conscious beings talking to a conscious being at our campuses, and you can write in as well online. We do have prayer teams that would love to pray for anyone about anything this might have sparked. It maybe reminded you of someone that you lost, and you're kind of walking through, and you need hope. We'd love to pray with you about that, or anything else that's going on in your life. So please take advantage of that. Also, I told you it would spark a conversation. That's what we wanted to do. And I want to remind you, and I thought of some questions in my own mind that I've heard this before, but I did have, and you can text your questions in. You can go to onelifechurch.org and go to the Explorer Edition page, and it'll give you a way to ask questions there. Or you can fill in comment in the comment section on YouTube, and we will answer these questions with Braxton on our One Life podcast and also on Trinity Radio podcast. And finally, we have resources. This is called The Soul by J.P. Moreland, and also Am I Just My Brain by Sharon Dirks. So take advantage of that because you begin the journey, and think about your thinking. And then finally, if you're at one of our live campuses, we want to help you enjoy your conscious experience today. Before you go to your car, we are serving up popcorn, and it's not just popcorn, it's like gourmet popcorn, just so we can stop and have discussions, and I think you'll enjoy that as well. So enjoy your conscious experience in the week before you. Have a great day. See you.